Hello, my Italian food fanatics. Today, we're going to make stuffed mushroom caps. It's going to be delicious. We're going to get portabellp mushrooms. We're going to take the gills out. We're going to roast them into the oven, let them cool down a little bit, and then we're going to make the stuffing with cremini mushrooms, white button mushrooms, a little bit of shallots and some garlic, some sherry. Put a little bit of cream in there, some Parmigiano Reggiano, some thyme, some parsley, a little bit of lemon juice, a little bit of pepper, a little bit of salt. Stuff the mushrooms, put them in the oven, bring them out, and we're going to have a feast. Anyway, before we go into the kitchen, please thumbs up, like, subscribe, share with your friends, and leave a comment below. If you have something that I've made that has inspired you to make the same dish, you can reach me on Instagram at Chef Argenti, and I'm happy to feature your dish in the next episode of Italian Food Fanatics. So now, without any further ado, let's get in the kitchen and make stuffed mushrooms. Delicious. Okay, let's get started. Let's take a look at our ingredient list first. Sans the mushrooms. We're going to get to the mushrooms in just a second. We're going to use a little shallots, some garlic, Parmigiano Reggiano, a little bit of heavy cream, some extra virgin olive oil, California of course, some thyme, some parsley, some sherry, and a lemon, in addition to some salt and pepper. So these are ingredients that we're going to make the stuffing with, including chopping up some smaller cremini and white button mushrooms. But first, let's get to the portabellp mushrooms and talk about those. All right, portabellp mushrooms, they're pretty big. These are pretty big. I mean, you can find them in even bigger and smaller sizes. But what we want to do is we want to take out the center portion here, the stem, and you want to kind of clean out the gills. And the reason for that is because these gills are bitter, is a good word for it. So now we have these just like this, and they're ready to go into the oven. We'll talk about that in a minute, but let me prep these mushrooms and we'll come back. All right, we're back. I have taken these mushrooms and taken the stems out and cleaned the insides, and I've also washed them. Whoever said that you cannot wash or should not wash mushrooms, this was a lie. Mushrooms are mostly water, and people say that you shouldn't wash them because it makes them turn black. And the reason for that is not the water. The reason for that is the more you touch them with your hands and you break the skin, this is what oxidizes them. So in this case, because they're going to go into the oven and they're going to cook and then we're going to stuff them, there really isn't that big of a deal if they do oxidize just a little bit. But you can see these have been washed now for about 5 minutes. There's really nothing wrong with them. So we are going to pour a little bit of olive oil on there and some salt. Now normally people put salt and pepper, but you know me, I do not like cooking with pepper, because to me that's a seasoning, and that's what I learned from Thomas Keller, and I believe him to be right. I mean, he's the greatest American chef, and I think that he knows what he's talking about. Let's put it that way. So, and now these will go on a sheet pan, and we'll put them in an oven at about 425 for a few minutes. We'll be back. Okay, here are our mushroom caps. We've lined a small sheet pan with foil. These go gill side up, and they're going to go into the oven at 425, and then we're going to turn them over after they've browned a little bit and cooked. Be back in a minute. All right, our portabellp mushroom caps have been in the oven, and you can see how they have released their juices. And now what we're going to do is we're going to turn them over and let them roast for about 10 minutes. They've been in for about 20. This is good. Turn them back this way and let them roast some more. About 10 more minutes in the oven. We'll be back. right, here we go. Here are our mushroom caps, and we're going to let them cool down. We're going to turn them over. I always enjoy using a spoon as opposed to tongs or anything like that for working with more delicate objects like these mushroom caps, by virtue of the fact that we don't want to damage them. So I turn them this way to ensure that they're going to cool down a little bit and we can handle them and then stuff them. So we'll be back in a little while. All right, let's get started with the stuffing. I have cut the shallot that we had in half. I'm going to take the skin off because you don't want to use that. And we're going to chop up the garlic into very, very small pieces. Now, a lot of people do this sort of thing in the food processor, but I'm not a fan of doing that sort of thing. And the reason is very, very simple. The food processor cannot accurately cut everything up. It cuts them up great, but you have different sizes. It cannot give a consistent result, in my opinion. It can do a great job of chopping up stuff really, really fast, but it's not a uniform cut. That's the better word. So we're just going to take the ends off of this and cut these up. I'm not going to bore you with doing that. I'll be back when these are chopped up. All right, our garlic and shallots have been chopped up, and now we're going to turn our attention to the mushrooms that we're going to use for the stuffing. Some cremini mushrooms and also white button mushrooms. Now, these are still dirty, as you can tell, and as you already know, you can wash mushrooms without any problems at all, contrary to what everybody tells you. So what I like to do is I like to cut the end off like this of the stem, and then we'll wash them. And then what we're going to do is we're going to cut them into fine dice. Now, a lot of people, again, use the food processor to do this, but you're 3 pulses away from having absolute mush and garbage. So in my opinion, it's better to take the next few minutes, say 5 additional minutes, and cut them up by hand than it is to go into a food processor, and if you make a mistake, it's just complete garbage. All right? It's a waste of food, and you don't want to serve something that's just not good. So we eliminate the possibility of making mistakes by doing it by hand when that's necessary. I'm all about using machines to be for convenience, but when it comes to sacrificing the quality, I'd rather do it by hand and take an extra 5 minutes. So we'll be back. All right, I have taken and washed these mushrooms. Just a little bit, still a little bit of schmutz left on there. I'm very, very light with the handling because you have to be. The more you rupture the skin or damage this part, that right there is what causes the mushroom to actually oxidize. So the more gentle you are, the better it is for the mushrooms, of course, and you don't have to fear washing them. So we're going to make what is known as a duxelle, and that is done by cutting the mushrooms here like this, and then taking them, and I'm just going to do one, we'll do 2 here, cutting them into strips like this, and then cutting these strips into little cubes like this. This makes everything beautiful, and it's something that the food processor cannot do, and that's why we do it by hand. Now, obviously, I'm just giving you a small portion here like this, but normally the operation, even though it is tedious and time-consuming, is going to be a little bit faster by doing multiple mushrooms at the same time. And here, I'll show you a little bit about that. That makes the work a little bit faster, all right? But for you and for me today, let's just concentrate on making nice square pieces out of the mushrooms. All right? There aren't that many mushrooms to do. Like I said, it's going to take 5 extra minutes that it wouldn't take in the food processor, and but you're going to come out with a product that's 1,000 times better. I'll be back when I've chopped everything up. All right, here we are. These are the hand-cut mushrooms, combination of white button and crimini. That's the way it should look, all right? All hand-chopped, nothing in the food processor. That's the reason why they come out this way. And you notice they're not black. They've been handled, but they're not black at all. See, though, there's a little larger piece, huh? Can you believe that I missed that? Anyway, so we're going to go on the stove now. And this will cook down into literally nothing because it's all water and air trapped in there. All right, back in a second. All right, let's turn the heat on. Put a few drops of our California extra virgin olive oil in the pan. We'll let that heat up a little bit, and then we will put our mushrooms in along with our shallots and garlic. I'll be back. All right, so our oil has come up to temperature, and we're going to put our mushrooms in. There's a lot of mushrooms, so that'll bring the temperature down instantly. That's what we want to hear. We want to hear that sizzle. We're also going to add in a little bit of salt, because what that does is it draws out the moisture and concentrates the flavors. And we'll also add in our garlic and shallots as well. It's a very small amount, but it'll be good. It's going to be, we want the taste to be predominantly mushroom anyway. And so we'll let that cook down. You can already see that the water is being released from the mushrooms. And in a minute, we're going to have a puddle here. But eventually that will cook off, and then you'll hear the sizzle of the mushrooms again. So they first go in, they sizzle, the water is released, the water evaporates, and then the oil will eventually cook the mushrooms, and we'll brown them a little bit, add a little bit of color and flavor, and then of course we have a little bit of garlic and shallots in there, and by the time this cooks down, that's going to be just about enough to really give it a nice flavor without overpowering it. So I'll be back when this is reduced down and that we're sizzling again. You don't have to touch it. You can just leave it the way that it is. A lot of people want to stir. That does nothing. Just leave it alone and let it cook out. See you in a bit. All right, I just want to give you an update. I've left them alone. I do what I say I'm going to do. I haven't touched them. I'll move them around a little bit for you so you can see. Look at how much water is being released by the mushrooms. So we continue to let them cook down. All right, here's a little bit of an update. Look how much the mushrooms have cooked down, and the water is beginning to evaporate. Well, it has been evaporating, but it's now beginning to really evaporate and end up being nothing. It's drying up, and that oil will come back into play, the olive oil, and will begin to sizzle and fry up the mushrooms. So you can see all of those mushrooms cooked down into literally nothing. We'll be back. All right, so now a lot of the water has evaporated, in fact most of it, and you can hear, if you listen, let me put the microphone up there. That the mushrooms are beginning to sizzle. That means that the water's evaporated and they're going to take on a little bit of color, which is exactly what we want them to do. So as these cook a little bit, next we're going to add our sherry, and then after that a little bit of cream to kind of bring it all together and make it delicious. And then we're going to finish it in a bowl with a little bit of salt and pepper, some thyme, and some Parmigiano Reggiano. Oh boy, the best is yet to come. By the way, I also wanted to mention, that's why we didn't add too much salt into here, because look how concentrated the flavors have become. It's cooked down. So if we added a lot of salt, what would seem to be appropriate for the amount of mushrooms, we would end up with a pile of salt. Here's essentially what it would have been. All right, so just a little bit goes a long way. Remember, we can always adjust later. All right, now these mushrooms have been cooking for a little while. We're going to add our sherry. Wow, that smells delicious. We're going to deglaze and let it cook down. And we'll be back to add some cream. All right, we see that the sherry has evaporated and we're back down to sizzling again. So we're going to add a little bit of heavy cream in here. Maybe a little bit more. So we're going to turn the heat off here. We'll mix this in a little bit. Now we're going to put it in the same bowl just to show you how little this amount really is. I'm going to put it in the same bowl that I used to originally, put the raw mushrooms in. So you can see how little it turned out to be. All right, we'll be right back. All right, here we go. That's the exact same bowl that we had the raw mushrooms in. Isn't that amazing? That's because it's mostly water. And then, of course, they were piled on top of each other, so that creates air pockets in there. And now they've cooked down. Unbelievable. You would never think that so many, what seems to be such a large amount of mushrooms, in reality, when the flavors are concentrated, it comes down to this. Now we're going to add a few other things along to the mushrooms, and one of those is cheese. We're going to have to wait just a few more minutes for it to cool down, but I'll come back in a minute. All right, while we're waiting for the duxelle to cool down, I'm going to chop up some thyme and also some of this flat leaf parsley that we have so that we can add it in. And we're going to chop an additional amount of flat leaf parsley so that we can finish the mushroom caps when they come out of the oven. So now we mix it up in there. And you can tell there's a little bit of residual heat coming back from the mushrooms, from the cooking, which will temper the thyme and basically mix everything else up in there perfectly. You don't want to put herbs into a lot of heat because that destroys them essentially. So we have the parsley in there, we have the cheese that will amalgamate, we have the brightness from the lemon, and a little bit of herbaceousness and base notes from the parsley. And you can see this is the reason why I only used a half a shallot and 2 small garlic cloves, because look, the amount is very, very small. It's an appropriate amount. In fact, in some circles, some people would say it's too much. But now you know why it looked kind of off when we first began, because I knew that the mushrooms would shrink down. So let's taste this, and I'll come back. Okay, we taste and adjust seasonings. All right, it's perfect with regard to salt. You just need to add a little bit of pepper in there. Let's taste again. Could use a little more lemon juice. There we go. Mix it in. And taste again. Now that's nice. Very good. Now let's stuff our mushroom caps and we'll put them in the oven. All right, here are our mushroom caps. I'm going to take the stuffing and neatly put it in the center. And now these go into the oven at 350 degrees, just to warm through for about 5 to 7 minutes. We'll be back. All right, my Italian food fanatics, you saw me put the mushroom cap on the plate. You saw me add a little bit of parsley. Here it is. Now it's time to taste. Let's see if this is any good. Of course, I already know what the center tastes like, and you know it as well. Wow. Portobello mushrooms. They're like vegetable meat, essentially. So if we were to serve this with a steak, it would complement it perfectly. Some sauteed onions on the side as well. It would be perfect. The meatiness of the portobello mushrooms is phenomenal. The stuffing, as you well know, is soigné. I've tasted it already. I love having a little bit of parsley on top. I like the flavor of parsley. It grounds everything, essentially. It doesn't, the lemon juice brightens up everything, and the parsley brings it down. That's why lemon and parsley go so well together. This is something that takes a little bit of work. Not a lot, but a little bit. And if you're going to have a steak or something like that, you can make the filling in advance, hold it for a couple of days, and then at the last moment, roast off your mushroom caps, and then stuff them, put them in the oven, and you're good to go. So good. Before I forget, please hit the thumbs up button, subscribe, hit the bell, share, and leave a comment below. Tell me what you think. Tell me about your experiences with stuffed mushrooms if you have a specific recipe. In fact, if you make some stuffed mushrooms on Instagram at Chef Argenti, send me a photograph and I will feature it on another episode of Italian Food Fanatics. This is so good. Unbelievable. You got to go make this. It's easy to do. The creaminess, the sherry, the garlic, the shallots is all in there. And of course, the earthiness of the mushrooms, it all works perfectly together. Come on, go make this, all right? I'm going to finish eating. You can watch me if you want, or turn it off. I don't care. So good. So good. Come on. Go make it. Come on. All right. I'll see you soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.